Business with a servant's heart. Welcome to the podcast. Inspiration, motivation takes. Listen to the podcast. We're all about to talk about life. Our guests will share their life story. We want you to success in life and business. We're ready and we will start shortly. We're gonna talk about life. We're going to speak on business. You're gonna shine bright. We are going to witness. Business with a servant's heart. With hosts Steve, Ramon, and Ray. Inspiration, education talks. Listen to the podcast.
Welcome, everyone, to Doing Business with a Servant's Heart podcast. I'm your host, Steve Ramona. I'm so thrilled to have you join us today. This podcast is dedicated to exploring the idea of doing business and living life with a purpose, serving others, and yes, achieving success. We believe that when we approach our work and our lives with a servant's heart, we can truly make a difference. We created this show for you because we want everyone to be motivated, inspired, and educated to make an impact in your world. Whether you're an entrepreneur, an 8-to-5 business, job, or you're a highly successful business owner, we're here to support you by teaching you how to be a servant's heart. Now, while listening to this incredible guest, oh my God, you guys are going to be blown away by this guest. I want you to think about how you're going to serve today and what impact you create with that service. Today's episode is brought to you by our amazing sponsor, Pantheon Alliance. Imagine your business is connected to high-level, high-earning, highly successful businesses, sharing networks, sharing referrals, and getting educated and learning to grow and educate and scale your business. If you're interested, please reach out to me and I'll get you some information on the Pantheon Alliance. With that being said, impact comes in many packages. My guest today is legally blind. She can see, but she has a disability. She took her disability is serving others. To me, the biggest servant heart in the world is when you take your disability and you help others. Emily, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here.
Real quick, tell the audience, and I asked this question, you're legally blind, so you can see, but it's really tough. Is your blindness getting worse?
Yes. So I have Stargardt's macular degeneration. And so my central vision is slowly deteriorating. So my peripheral vision is the strongest. As we're here today, you might see my vision drift to, I think it's the right for you, but it's usually the left. And that's because that's the best way I can see. And so my brain tells me to, makes my eyes do what they do. And so often I look to the left of folks when I'm talking to them. But my central vision is deteriorating slowly but surely.
You don't let it hold you back.
No.
Why not?
Because it's life. I can either live life sitting in an apartment and being sad and gloomy, or I can live life to the fullest I can and be with my kids and go surfing. It's a choice every day.
And you surf and you're legally blind.
I surf, legally blind, yes.
Well,
I'm heading out on Saturday. I can't wait.
Well, this is exciting because how many people, and you probably talked to like I have, is I can see clearly, have 20/20 vision and sit home and I can't do this, I can't do that. Here, you're legally blind, you're losing your eyesight, and you're super successful. What do you accredit that to?
I actually accredit to that, to my vision disability. I have had to work harder than most people. I have had to struggle through things more than most people. And I am not the smartest person. I will admit that right off the bat. If I told you my SAT scores, if I remembered them, you would be like astonished. But I will outwork anybody that I'm around. And so I will figure it out. I will put in the effort and I will get it done. And I do think that's because nothing has really come easy to me ever, as a soccer player and a javelin thrower in college. And it was difficult. It was a lot of work. And whatever I wanted, I had to go get and I had to work hard. So.
God, you're so much like me because my SAT scores sucked too. And in sports, I always, as a good athlete, but I was always told you made the team or you're better because you worked harder.
Yeah. Yeah.
all the talent in the world usually gets wasted, not usually, but gets wasted because there's got to be work and talent, and they've got to go together, and you can develop your talent.
Yep.
Let's talk about disability.
Yeah.
It's a big thing. DEI. You work with right now with government in Oregon, but you work with companies and governments. What's your main goal with that?
So the Americans with Disabilities Act this month actually was passed 34 years ago, and it provided incredible protections for folks and laws and regulations and standards, etc. But because of a law, any law cannot change the culture that it's trying to affect. It can provide supports for sure. But when the ADA was passed, a lot of conversations stopped around disability because people were scared of being sued. People are scared of saying and doing the wrong thing, so therefore they just don't say anything. And so the impact that I hope to have inside companies and organizations is educating is probably my primary source of income and my primary service. And so I educate companies and organizations, the employees at ground level, leadership, all of the above, to become more aware and to normalize the conversation of disability inside a workplace. It shouldn't be something that's weird and uncomfortable and awkward like it is. Disability is just another human difference, and we need to provide accommodations, but we truly just need to understand and start talking about it inside organizations, and people are just terrified to do that.
So you're the megaphone for companies to shout loud and proud about disabilities, that it works. It's be aware of it, not put it in the corner, this little corner of the office, and go, we'll get to it when we get to it.
Absolutely. And be respectful about it, but you have to learn about it to be respectful about it. We're expected in all diversity, equity, inclusion buckets. We as adults are expected to know everything, yet often we have not had conversations. We have not had education around how to be respectful inside of cultures and communities that we're not aware of. And so the more we can normalize it and talk about it in respectful and kind ways, the further and faster this work can evolve and people can bring their full selves to work.
Yeah. So it's like the mechanic doing heart surgery. You wouldn't want a mechanic to do heart surgery on you. You come in as that heart surgeon to do heart surgery. I guess that's a pretty good analogy. I didn't think about it. To come in and educate, but make sure, because ROI is always the elephant in the room, is to help them grow with this disability, but also not get fined or get regulated because of the disability, correct?
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Have you heard any stories of people being fined because of their lack of disability in their business organization?
Yes, and it's a sensitive subject for me in the sense that yes, it needs to happen. People need to be held accountable to the laws and regulations that have been in place for 34 years. And the digital space is where we hear this most often, is that websites, apps, softwares are not accessible for folks with disabilities. And so there are people who are out there intentionally finding websites, intentionally finding companies and filing lawsuits, which, yes, there needs to be that accountability. And we need to do it if we're educating and trying to be preventative, and companies are really attempting to be preventative and say, okay, yes, I never thought about looking at the accessibility of my digital space. Now that I know that is a thing that I need to do, I'm going to move forward and do that. I would rather have companies and organizations have that thought process versus I need to do this or we're going to get sued and get in trouble, because that just perpetuates the fear and the stigma around disability versus being preventative and really bringing awareness and understanding the impact of an inaccessible website, for example. Like there's a bigger impact than just, oh, people want to come sue me, which is what give the perception starts to be around people that are, filing those suits.
No, and I appreciate that, because that's the wrong message that needs to go out. And and I'm thinking as you're talking, what I don't know, I don't know.
Exactly.
But Emily comes in and says, you'll know.
You'll know, and we can do more digging, and I have the resources to help you. So it's a priority. And when we look at 1 in 4, more like 1 in 3 in my opinion, people in the US experience disability, there's a large population of people you are excluding from your business or your organization, whether that's as somebody to hire, whether that's somebody to buy your products and services. If your products and services aren't accessible, that's money out of your pocket that you could be, gaining by being accessible to someone.
These are one of the things that you do with the company is show them the increase to the bottom line by working with. Talk about that a little bit. It's so interesting to me.
Yeah, if we look at the buying power, so for example, I'm not going to mention any names.
No.
I had an experience and I was applying. This is back when I had more sight than I do now. I was still able to write and read like a job application. And yes, this was when we would handwrite a job application. um, but I was able to do that at that time. However, because of my sight, I have to hold everything really close. And so I was at a restaurant trying to apply. This is when I was in my early 20s, trying to apply for a job. And someone came over and being funny, haha, and joking about whatever with his friends. And he put a big beer mug under my face, between my face and the paper. And he said, "Can you see it now?" Ha 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 ha, laughing, laughing, laughing. Thought it was hilarious, walked away. I just sat there like, did that really just happen in a place of employment? Like, I'm filling out a job application, and it was just mind-boggling. But I wrote choice words on that job application and I left. But in that moment, I never will ever eat at that restaurant again. So there's my server, there's my business, the money out of my pocket. I will never eat there. And I told my family, so my mother, my father, my sister, my brother, anyone around me, every time we drive past that restaurant, I say, never eat there again because of this experience. So we're not just talking about the 1 in 4 people who have a disability that can affect a business, but it's the buying power. And I think it's $8.1 trillion of buying power between us and the ones who love us. And so something's inaccessible or somebody treats somebody badly at a place of work or establishment, you can guarantee you're going to lose a significant amount of revenue from that.
Great story. And I'm glad you didn't take the job. I'm like, holy mackerel. And that's sad too, because the company owners and managers they've got to be in control of that. And it's probably, he's been doing it for a while. They just let it go and it bit him in the booty.
Yeah.
I'm very curious as going through your whole bio and everything you do. What's the journey? I have a company, I got 100 employees. I hire you to come in. What's the journey that you work with me to help me with disability and DEI?
Yeah, it depends on what we're looking at. If we're looking at internally versus externally, so there's different aspects there, but I really like to do an employee survey. As a third party, I can do an employee survey that touches on all demographic information to really judge the experience of your employees and based on their identities. So we're able to look at cross-sectional data to say, hey, people who are disabled, who have visible disabilities, or excuse me, apparent disabilities, we have a better experience than those who have disabilities who have non-apparent disabilities. So something you can't see or recognize right out the bat. So we can take that data and break it down. Then we can understand like, okay, there's a big gap in you as an employer around this population of people. We can do that with race. We can do that with gender. We can do that with disability. We can do that with all different and age, and see how your workforce and where there might be gaps in you as an employer helping your people with different identities. So there's that piece. Then there's just education. So corporate training, disability awareness 101. We have a 201. I personally do high level diversity, equity, inclusion. So like the big broad bucket of why it's good to be nice to people who don't look like you, act like you, move like you, believe like you, think like you, vote like you, and understanding bias and microaggressions and intersectionality and whatnot there. But then also I have contractors that have lived experience in other identities. So I am really passionate about not trying to stand up here as a white woman talking about what it's like or how to interact with a person of color, because that is not my lived experience. So I have contractors that I work with in all the other buckets, race and ethnicity, LGBTQIA plus, multi-generational workplace, the veterans experience, intersectionality, and then I handle disability. So I have contractors to cover all those buckets in the education field. And then I also do consulting. So from that, we might notice you don't have an accommodation process for folks to request accommodations, so I can help you develop that. You might not have, you want to take a look through policies and procedures and make sure they're not unintentionally excluding folks. And then there's the last bucket of keynote speaking. So I do keynote speaking for conferences, large meetings, facilitations and stuff like that. And that's more around a general bucket of belonging, or I can go specifically into disability. So I kind of have those areas that I
So you'll
specialize
do
in.
that inside of a company too. You'll go, hey, we're going to bring the whole 100-person staff in my company. You're going to keynote speak and talk about a general bucket. Ah, I love that.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
love that education. And then they
yeah,
get to know you. They can ask questions and all that.
absolutely. And as a third party for all of these things, there's a huge trust issue that happens inside most organizations. And if the trust isn't there, you're not going to find out the information that's really happening. And so as a third party, I'm able to take in that information and then disclose what I need to in order to make progress in the organization, but there's nobody's going to be called out. Nobody's going to be, tokenized or targeted based on the information they share. So that's also really important.
Man, I love what you're doing. You have it down pat. We got a little bit of time here.
Yeah.
Somebody is listening, they have a disability and they're an employee.
Yep.
And they're being bullied or discriminated. Couldn't think of that word. What would you tell them?
I do a lot of coaching around what has happened. Have you disclosed? The conversation of actually disclosing a disability is one of the most common ones I have. How much have you disclosed? So have you mentioned that you have a vision, you have low vision, we'll say, but you haven't asked for any services because you're afraid? Have you mentioned that you have, and there has been retaliation? What does that look like? What is the process that you've taken? And then how can we start doing some reparative work? I work with a lot of supervisors and managers to talk about disability and managing somebody with a disability in an appropriate and open and honest way. And so there's that component there. But for the person with a disability, it really depends. I can't say you should always disclose because that's the ADA says we can. It's not safe to do that. And so it's working with that person within the guidelines that they feel comfortable talking about, and walking through, okay, what is the next step we can take without you potentially being fired or let go or retaliated against. And that's a real thing, unfortunately.
Yeah. Let's flip to the other side. A business owner's listening and like, God, you're making some great points. What's a tip you'd give them to start their journey on being more what's the word I want to use?
Inclusive. Yeah.
Inclusive. That's exactly. Thank you. See, the host needs help all the time. She's so smart. Love her. Can't do good on SATs, but she's smart with inclusiveness. And that's the most important. So what would you tell them? Somebody's listening.
Honestly, training has a really bad rap right now. Corporate training or training inside your organization has a bad rap. And I want to say that let's not go there. Is training in itself going to change your organization? Absolutely not. Like one class or, 2 classes is not going to change your organization. So, however, it is going to lay the foundation, especially around disability, because disability is often not talked about. We don't know the language to use. We don't know what a microaggression looks like inside of a disability versus a racial microaggression, etc. And so we have to lay that foundation. Once we lay that foundation, most likely the employees are going to be the ones that are like, hey, Emily said this. Let's ask some questions. Is this program accessible? Is this product accessible? How can we make this process more accessible? And so once those seeds are planted, especially in the realm of disability, because we've never had a safe space to talk about it, then we're going to start looking at our daily activities and being like, I wonder. And then as an employer, it's your job to say, okay, I'm getting enough questions about this, this, and this to start taking action. And so what does that look like? We can also go from the, the evaluative state and say, let's take a look, like I said, with the employee survey. Let's do a basic training to get started. And then let's review your policies and procedures and see, what is going on there. We can also do physical space walkthroughs. Is your space accessible, not just by the standards of the ADA code, but when a human enters that space, is it welcoming? Does it feel good? Is it able to be navigated? So that's the physical space. And then we also do the digital space evaluations. So we're able to assess your digital space, your website, your apps, your whatever, and say, these are not accessible and these are the things you need to change.
Yeah. I love it. You're so powerful. You really are. You're making a difference. And these are world changers here, because that's what it's going to take. I've asked some.
One more thing, just really important, is I am very passionate about coming from a very positive lens.
Yeah.
And there are people who dispute that, like, I live this identity. It is exhausting some days to constantly teach and coach and train on my lived experience, as in my life, I'm also navigating having a disability and not being able to drive and all the things. So it is exhausting, but I really am passionate about making sure that it's coming from a positive lens versus that accusatory, or you're a bad company, you're a bad employer, you're a bad this. We might recognize negative things inside the company and organization, but let's take it for what it is and say, okay, we are now aware of these things. How do we move forward? I don't need to do all the shaming and blaming and all that to make it feel like a really horrible experience. It is what it is. And now let's move forward and see how we can make it better.
It's a great lesson for any part of a business, not only the inclusiveness and DEI across the board. More positive you are in your culture, the better the company's going to be.
Yeah.
And I love that you said that. I asked some questions you've never been asked before. And this one really just, I'm so interested.
Uh-oh.
What is it like dating with a disability?
Oh, of course, that's the one you pick. Oh my
yeah,
God.
of course, right? It's just, I'm interested because I don't have a disability. I never thought about that. But then when I read it, I'm like, that is an interesting question.
Yeah. So for the listeners, I'm recently divorced. And I have taken the last year and a half to really do the work on myself. But it's also around, how do I do this again? Like when I was married, when I met my ex-husband, I was 27, I think, somewhere around there. And I had a lot more sight than I do now. So because this is progressive, I could hide it better back then. So I didn't tell him that until like 2 or 3 weeks in of us dating that I was legally blind. He just thought I couldn't drive. And his assumption was that I got a DUI, driving under the influence. And he was like, okay, whatever. But I told him about my sight. But there's the whole thing, just like an employer. Number one, do I put it on my dating profile? If I do, will I ever get a date? When do I tell them? Do I tell them before I meet them? Do I tell them after I meet them? Do I have a guide dog. She's basically retired at this point, so I don't take her like I used to, but that's not always safe. So there's like this constant navigation, and there is people who are like, okay, I've told, I have a vision disability, I don't drive, and they have been like, cool, I'm not interested. And it is hard, and it is uncomfortable, and it hurts like hell. But I think I'm thinking more about when and how and what they'll think. And to a certain extent, I'm getting better about just being like, screw it. I have a lot more to offer. I know I'm an amazing partner. And if you can't deal with that, then I'm good. But it's still that constant thought in the back of your head.
But in the back of your head too, you're like, I'm glad they said no. Instead, you went through this journey of 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 weeks and going, they ghost you, they leave you. I mean, it's hard, but in the long run, the short term is hard, long term, it's great. And I'm going to say this to you and tell the audience, you may be losing your sight, but your heart is getting bigger every day. And that's what people should look at in anybody, whether they have sight or not. What is their heart and soul more than if they have no arms or can't hear or can't see? That's the most important thing. Because I think you will have somebody to love you no matter what their disability. Love is still love. Doesn't matter where you're at in your life. Right?
Yeah. And that's an acceptance piece, I think, for me.
Yeah.
It's, it's not a one-time acceptance either for me. Like somebody who loses a limb, that's an acceptance that's in that moment. And I'm not discounting their experience at all. But like, because it's progressive, the constant like adjusting I have to do and thinking about like, in the future, I don't know how much I'll see. There's always this I don't know about my sight. It's not a clear-cut path. And so it's a constant acceptance for me and understanding that I do have so much more to offer than my sight. And if you can't get over the fact I can't drive, then
next. I make it simple. I hate to be crap, but it's really next. And single guys out there listening, this is not a dating podcast, but I love this girl. And I'm much older. I'm an old guy and I'm married, all that. But you call my sister for it. But yeah, again, it's all about the heart. And you really do have that. So we're at the end here. We're a little over, but I'm glad we are because you're so awesome. Let's have I got a fun question for you.
Okay.
I always end my shows with this. So you're walking into a restaurant and it's a table of 4. You've got one chair. So the other 3 chairs are empty. Who would occupy those chairs, dead or alive? Why? And most importantly, what food would you order?
Oh, it would definitely be sushi. I know that right off the bat. I love sushi. The one that comes to mind mostly because she was on my walls all my life was Mia Hamm. I was a big time soccer player. I wanted to play, bigger collegiate soccer than I did. I wanted to play pro for sure. I wanted to go to North Carolina. So Mia Hamm would be there on one chair. The Rock, just because he's gorgeous.
I love The Rock. Okay, I'm with you there. He is good looking.
And one more. There's a very amazing surfer who is, I can't remember if she's completely blind or if she's partially blind. Melissa Reed, and just hearing her journey in the sport, I think I'm going to say her. Oh, no, it would be Michelle Obama. Michelle Obama.
Michelle Obama. Well, you can do 4. We'll do 4. Yeah. Let's break the rules.
So Melissa Reed would be one, just so I could understand how she learned to surf and be as good as she is and what challenges she faces in the sport of surfing. And then Michelle Obama, just an incredible woman.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And this is not
Oprah. Oh my gosh. I can't.
Well, there you go. We'll make 5. That's okay. It's your table. You can bring many chairs. There's more chairs, so that's okay.
Yes,
break the rules. Yes. And by the way, we have a pretty big podcast. Maybe it's big enough, but The Rock, if you're listening, reach out to her.
Yes, I love her.
And on a side note, audience probably heard me say, I'd love to get him on my show because talk about a servant's heart. He's bald, and we could talk all day about the Rock. But with that being said, people listening want to reach out to you. How can they find you and support you?
I'm on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. My website is Purryco, so PURRYCO.com, and LinkedIn as well, Emily Purry on LinkedIn. So I'm on all the major ones, and I'm always available. So
thank you so much. God bless you. You're a blessing. Keep doing what you're doing. I'm going to support you any way I can in the future, and please, audience, support her. This is a big topic. It's controversial, but she can definitely help, or help her, support her in any way you can. Don't forget my TV show, Together We Serve, every Friday at 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern. Also, me and Emily, thank you so much for watching and listening to this podcast. And we look forward to seeing you all in the next episode of Doing Business with a Servant's Heart. See you all.